Okay, in today's lesson, we are going to be talking about writing equations, linear equations, in slope-intercept form. And so our goal is to be able to do two things, to be able to write an equation if we're given a graph or given 2 points. So the first thing we need to do is we first of all need to remember what slope-intercept form is, and that is our y equals mx plus b. And remember, our m is our slope, and our b is our y-intercept. So there's mainly two different types of problems you're going to have. We'll split this up. So how we find the m and how we find the b. And our two problems are, if I'm given a graph, what will I do? And if I'm given 2 points, what will I do? Given a graph is the easiest one because there's not as much work. You can look at the graph and see what happens. When you have a graph, the first thing you do is you find where it crosses x-axis or y-axis. Where does it cross y-axis? If you find that, that is your b value. So this is our b's and this is our m's. On a graph, once you find your y-axis, then you count your slope. So you count rise over run. And then once you know what your m and your b is, then you just plug it into the equation, y equals mx plus b. Now, if you're given 2 points, you have to do it, and it's a little bit harder because I don't have the graph. So the first thing I need to do is I need to use my slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That will give you your slope. And for right now, the only type of problems that we'll have that are like this with 2 points is when I know what my y-intercept is, and it gives you a point with a 0. That's when it crosses the y-axis because I don't go any left or right. So whatever number is paired with 0, that is your y-intercept. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on some problems. Let's zoom in. I'll do the first one, and then I'll give you guys an opportunity to try it, and then check with the video to see if you did it right. So again, the first thing, remember whenever I do y equals mx plus b, my y-intercept, my b is the beginning. It's where I start. So I start right here, which is at -1, 2, 3. So my b is -3. Now what I need to do is I need to count how many I go up and how many I go over. So I have to go up 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 over, and I go over to the right 1. So 3 over 1. So my slope is just 3. So my equation, remember, is y equals mx plus b. And so my m is 3, so y equals 3x plus b, and my b is -3. So there is my equation for that line. So again, I started off with my b, found out where it crossed the y-axis, and then I counted my slope. So I'd like you to take a second to try the second two. Start off with finding your b and then counting your slope. When you think you have it, press play so you can check your work. So for the first one, you should have known it didn't go up or down, so it's just 0. And then it's up 1 over 4. So my slope is 1/4. So again, when I plug it into y equals mx plus b, it'll be y equals 1/4 x plus my b, which is 0. So you can either write plus 0, or you could just leave it as y equals 1/4 x. For the third one, you should have saw that your y-intercept was at +2, and I had to go down 3. Since I went down 3, it's -3, and then I had to go to the right 3. So -3 over 3. Well, -3 divided by -3 is -1. So when I use my y equals mx plus b, My m is negative 1x plus b, which is negative 2. You also could just write y is equal to negative x plus 2, because remember, negative 1 can be there. It doesn't have to be there. If you have the negative, then it's assumed it's negative 1. So when you're given a graph, it's relatively easy because you just have to find where your b is, and then you have to go ahead and count your slope. All right, so let's look at the second problems. I'd like you to take a second, let me zoom out, and write down the first 3 so that way I can go over number 1, and then you could try 2 and 3 on your own. Okay, so if you don't have them all copied down, then remember you're supposed to hit pause to make sure you have them. So when I'm doing this, I need to find my m and my b. My b is the one that's paired up with 0. So my b value for this problem is 4. My slope, I have to use my y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Let me give myself enough space there. So remember when you label it, this is x1, and then this is y1, because it's the first point I see. Remember, it's always xy, xy. It's never going to be xx, yy. So remember, it's alphabetical. And then this is my second x and my second y. So now when I plug these in, my second y comes first because it says y2. And my second y is 3 minus my first y, which is 4. Now I go to the denominator. My second x is 2 minus my first x, which is 0. 3 minus 4 is negative 1 over 2. So that's my slope. So remember, we keep using y equals mx plus b. Well, I just found my slope to be negative 1/2. Make sure we can see that, the negative. And I found my b to be 4. So there is my answer for this. So you have to find your b, and you have to find your slope. And remember, use your slope, doing your slope formula. So what I'd like you to do is try the next 2. And when you think you have it, press play so that you can check to see how you did. All right, I'm going to switch these up here because that way I have more space. Last time was a little crowded. Remember, your b is your y-intercept. It's where x is 0. And so my b for this problem, number 2, is negative 2. Now I'm going to write the formula again. The more you write the formula, the more likely you are to remember it. And so x1, y1, x2, y2. And now I plug them into my formula. My y2 value is negative 2 minus my y1 value is 5. My x2 value is 0 minus my x1 value is negative 1. A negative 2 and a negative 5 is a negative 7. 2 negatives become plus, so it's positive 1. So my slope for this problem is negative 7. So now I'm going to plug it into y equals mx plus b. My m was negative 7, and my b was negative 2. All right, let's look at the third one. So my b and my m. Remember, your b is with whenever x is 0. Well, x is 0 at 0, so it's just 0. And again, I need to do my slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Here's my x1, y1, x2, y2. So it's going to be 0 minus 2 over 0 minus 4. Well, that's negative 2 over negative 4. My 2 negatives will become plus. And now I need to reduce it. And 2/4 reduces to 1/2. So I just found my slope to be a positive 1/2. So now my equation is y equals mx plus b. My m is 1/2. And my b was 0. And so you can write plus 0 or you can leave it without the 0. And there's your answer. So again, I found my y-intercept, and then I had to use my slope formula. All right, same thing down here. You're going to copy the problems down first, and then I'll go over the first one. And then from there, I'll give you an opportunity to try them, and then you can check your work. So these have funny notations. But really, remember, whenever I plug something in, I always plug in the x. So this is telling me my x is 3, and when I plug in a 3, I get a 5 in return. And this one's telling me when my x is 0, I get a 2 in return. And now it's the exact same problem as what we did up here, where you had to find your m and your b. So my b for this one is paired with my x when it's 0. So my b is 2. My m, I have to use my slope formula, x1, y1, x2, y2. Kind of squeeze it over here. I don't have much space in this bottom part. So my y2 is 2 minus my y1 is 5 over my x2 is 0 minus my x1 is 3. So it's negative 3 divided by negative 3, which is a positive 1. So now when I plug this in, I'm going to get y is equal to 1x, so just x plus 2. Okay, so I'd like you to try the next two. The first thing you need to do is write them as ordered pairs, and then you can find your y-intercept, and you can do your slope. Okay, so hopefully you tried them all. Negative 2 and 1, 0 and negative 3. So my b is right here, negative 3. And my slope, if I label them x1, y1, x2, y2. Let me zoom in for you. If I plug this in, my y2 value is negative 3 minus my y1 value, which is 1. My x2 value is 0 minus my x1 value, which is negative 2. Negative 3 and a negative 1 make a negative 4. 0 minus negative 2 make a positive 2. And so negative 4 divided by 2 is a negative 2. So now when I plug it in, y equals mx plus b, my m is negative 2, and my b is negative 3. Okay, one last one, same process. I start off by listing my points, 5, 1, 0, 0. My b value is right here at 0. And now I need to find my m. I'm going to try and squeeze it over here. So this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So really it's just 0 minus what we have. So 0 minus 4 and 0 minus 5, which is positive 4/5. Because a negative 4, well actually we'll just do that. So that's negatives. So I get a positive 4/5. So now when I plug it in, my slope is 4/5 and my b is 0. So you can either write 0 or you could just leave it as 4/5 x. So all of these problems that have points follow the same process. You have to first find your y-intercept and then find your slope using the slope formula, and then you can plug them in. Remember, if you're given problems that are graphing, these are the ones that people will tend to like the most because it's less work. You just have to look and see where it crosses, and then you have to count your slope. So these sometimes will be easier. But again, it's the same process. Find your m and your b and plug them in.